Welcome to another episode of the Time Management Revolution podcast. I'm Helene Segura, and today I am excited to welcome our guest, Lissy Alden. She is the CEO and founder of MYNDY, that's MYNDY, a pioneering organizational and mental fitness company built to beat employee burnout. Who doesn't want that? Recognizing stress as a multifaceted challenge, she's engineered two proven frameworks addressing psychological, physiological, and organizational factors that simultaneously empower organizations to achieve ambitious goals while maintaining employee well-being. She went to Cornell and has her graduate degree from MIT, where she began the foundational research for MYNDY. Let's welcome Lissy. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Helene. This is a very special topic that's near and dear to my heart.
Excellent. And one of the first questions that I want to kick off with is a part of your title, mental fitness. What is that?
Yeah, so mental fitness is the practice of doing mental exercises that help you build the right mindset to achieve your goals. And in the same way you go to the gym and do exercises to work on your body so that you can maybe lift your kids with more strength or you can look your best, there are exercises that you can do that pull cross-discipline from neuroscience to positive psychology that help us build what we call mental muscles. So focus, energy, mood. And this is really where mental fitness comes in. So the practice looks a little different for everybody, just like our routines at the gym. But mental fitness is really about these long-term behaviors that build new mental patterns.
Oh, nice. Now you've already hinted a bit as far as the answer to my next question, but just to help everybody out to make this obvious, since it's a time management podcast, what does mental fitness have to do with time management?
Yeah. So, oh my goodness. Well, like I said, mental fitness is really about creating the right mindset to achieve your goals. And what's really tough whenever you're struggling with time management, which is one of the main reasons I started this company, is that at the end of the day, figuring out what matters is the first step. So figuring out what your priorities are, but then managing around those priorities is one of the hardest things you can do as a human today, between the pings and pangs we have from the internet, our relationships, and then work. Managing your time is really, really about mindset. About making sure that your brain is feeling fresh and good so that you can triage and make the right decisions, so that you can make sure that you're on time for things. And as somebody with time blindness, this has been something I've been working on for my whole life. So excited to chat more about this.
Yes, and I am excited about every single thing that you just uttered, because one of the mantras that I preach when I'm working with my clients is that time management is all about mind management. And while calendar apps and task apps are good tools, in the end, it's your mind. So that's why I'm really fascinated about everything that you're going to be saying about mental fitness. So you probably did not grow up thinking that, hey, I want to start a mental fitness company. So were there events in your life that led to this?
Yeah, oh my goodness. I think like a lot of, stories, there was just a lot of these little pivot points that made me realize that there was work that I needed to do on my mindset. I mean, first off, I always say that I was stressed growing up. Like even as a little girl, my fourth grade teacher was like, "Why is your face always scrunched up when you're getting assignments?" Like I was just always kind of geared towards working really hard. And when you want to work hard, and I had an undiagnosed reading disability, I constantly found like I was behind. Like I was always taking longer to take assignments. I would struggle to figure out like what I should work on first. And so time never felt like my friend. And then I started working and I started getting even more stressed. I burned out in my first two jobs. I was working all the time. And I kept trying to figure out, I was reading all of these self-help books, really trying to learn more about how I could spend less time and get greater results, because I never had enough time to quote unquote do what I wanted to do. And this was true at work and at home. And so I ended up going to grad school because I thought that I was going to solve the time problem at work systemically. Like I was going to go and hold the hands of CEOs and help them transform organizations so that employees felt like they could manage their time, like they had the right amount of workload, like we didn't have to be so stressed all the time to get work done, because I always liked work. I should say that. Like, I wasn't trying to do less. I actually loved the work I was doing. I just felt like I never had enough time to get it done. And so I ended up becoming a company fixer. After I went to MIT, I used this organizational fitness model in a couple different places. And the last one was a public company. And what I learned was that even when companies are beautifully structured, when employers think about workload and think about work-life balance and manage for that, people were still stressed out about time. And this is when I left. I started studying the brain. And I was trying to understand at the individual level, at my level, why was it that I never felt, no matter how much time I had or how few or many priorities I had, that I never had enough time. And this was what led me to build my mental fitness model. And I'm happy to talk more about that. But there was just a lot of these little points in my life that felt like they were pointing me in this direction. And eventually I had to start the company to solve for the problem.
And what did you figure out from your research?
Yeah. So what I learned is that I built this two-part mental fitness model that addresses this idea that there's basic things our brain needs every day to feel fresh and good. And then I've also learned that there's these mental muscles that you can activate for what we call high performance. And if you don't do the basic exercises that your brain needs to feel good, it's really hard to do things like focus for a long time or shift your priorities when you're having one of those busy days away from something you should be, shouldn't be working on towards something you should. And so what I learned was that a tired brain is a non-time management capable brain. That when you're exhausted and you don't have the energy, your brain can't think well. So it can't triage. It can't pull back away from your screen, if you're scrolling on social media, or away from the phone call that you're late for the next phone call for. And so one of my favorite facts I always share is, and you, I'm sure know this, is your brain takes up 2% of your body weight and between 20 and 35% of the energy you burn every day. And so if such a small part of your body can burn so much energy when you're not feeling good, again, you can't think well. And so building my foundations of, making sure I feel like I have the energy to then think well is my first step. And then I can talk obviously about any of these mental exercises I do, but these exercises help me build flexibility in my mindset so that, again, I can catch myself when I'm in one of those moments where I'm running late or working on the wrong thing.
Right. And I would love for you to give some examples of what those mental exercises are.
Yeah. So there's basically a little framework. It's a stoplight. So if you're at home, it's red, yellow, green. I always need things like this to help me remember stuff. But we always say that these categories of exercises fall under what we call stop, slow, and go. So stop is really about recovery. This is about allowing your brain to rest. These are things like mindfulness, meditation, breath work, even free writing, where you just get a piece of paper and set a timer and just write as much as you want. Your brain needs time where it's not taking in more information, because in many ways we're suffocating our heads. I always joke, your brain doesn't know the difference between a Netflix show and your work. And so if you don't spend time doing nothing, then it's kind of like an athlete spending 24/7 on a treadmill. Eventually, they're going to run out of gas. And that's what's happening with a lot of our brains. So when it comes time to triage our to-dos, we really struggle to make those decisions. So stop is really about recovery. So the next category of exercises is what we call slow. This is about cross-training or creating new mental patterns. You can do this in a million different ways. Some of my favorite are cognitive behavioral therapy journaling exercises, where you reframe the way that you're thinking about a certain problem with just a new way of asking the question. Creativity, walking a new way to work, even writing your to-do list in a different way, or drawing your to-do list, which is one of my favorite things to do when I'm in a little bit of a rut. These are all ways that help you think a little bit differently and create, again, new mental patterns. And then last but not least is go. This is the practice of what we call scoring. This is making and recognizing progress. And I find that for most of us who struggle with time, that because we don't have enough time, our brain typically, I should say, defaults to the negative, especially when we're tired. We focus on what we haven't done as opposed to what we have. And your brain needs to feel good. We need to hit that dopamine receptor. It's why we reach for our cell phones and the Netflix and the snacks and all of that when we're bored or tired or lonely. And so finding ways to cross things off your to-do list and feel good and recognize those moments it's a practice, we always say. And so goal recognition is a big part of what we talk about. So every day we say you need to stop, slow, and go. Can be as informal as, using an app. It could be as informal as taking a moment to pause and just do nothing on a walk, or put no music on or podcast on while you're cooking. Could be, you again asking a new kind of question when you enter a Zoom call. It could be, you keeping a to-do list and then keeping a to-done list. But we really, I'm really focused on making sure that people know that these activities need to be intentional, and they can be as small as 30 seconds, but you need them every day.
Right, exactly. So if somebody is listening to this and they think, this sounds really great, but I don't feel like I'm in a place where I really need it yet, because some people measure their time management skills based on whether or not they can show up on time to a meeting. So that's great if you can show up on time, but you might have time challenges in other areas. What are some signals that folks need this kind of mental fitness?
Good question. So I always like to say, like, the signals are kind of associated with each of the mental movements. So this stop, slow, go. So if you're finding your mind is racing, that you're really struggling to quote unquote catch your breath, or you're feeling like you're on a hamster wheel, this is a signal that your brain needs time to recover. I also find that if you're waking up ruminating, or you're struggling to fall asleep, this is also a sign that your brain is seeking time to encode the information that you're putting into it throughout the day. And so you need to find these moments of recovery. So those are some of the triggers for, making sure you recover or stop when it comes to your brain. When it comes to slower creating new thought patterns, if you find yourself thinking, so many of us think all of us think the same things over and over again. Our brains are pattern makers and repeaters. But if you're noticing that the thoughts that you're thinking are negative, I can't, I won't, I wish I could, I should, this is a signal that it's time to start practicing what we call cross-training your mind, which is thinking in new ways and creating more perspective on your life. And lastly is go. If you feel like you are never ahead of your to-do list, I always like to say there's a problem with the list. Especially because if you're here listening to this podcast, you are trying hard to be better. And so it's really about making sure that you're taking a look at the way that you're setting up your day and the way you're closing your day, and making sure that you can win your day. And this is where we talk about, again, goal setting and recognition being a practice and something that really takes some work to get good at. But I would say that's kind of a signal to know if I'm never feeling good at the end of the day, and again, I'm feeling scramble wambled, as I say at the beginning of the day, that's when it's time for you to work on go. So it's really about the mental movement, I'd say.
Okay. And would you find that the majority of your clients are doing this as a reactionary means, meaning they have hit that burnout wall? Or do you have a number of clients who are being preventive and they realize, if I learn these skills now, I can prevent myself from going through all of these issues later?
So, what I wish I could tell you is that this is like what I want to do is build the kind of company and brand that people can come to because it's preventative, right? They get excited by it. They can't wait to go and work out their mind. And that's aspirational. Today, right now, a lot of my clients come to me because they're facing pain points. And, just for everyone listening, like, there is not a single person who in private does not confide in me that they are doing some element of work on their mindset right now, because time is a struggle. It just is. I joke, it's invisible. We can't touch it. We can't feel it. And the world is just getting more crowded and busy. And so most people come to me with a pain, meaning there's some, they're burned out, they're tired, they're not getting their goals done, they want to achieve something different. And then, for years, I've been working on this. And years later, people do this preventatively. And that's where, I think many of us might go to the gym because we have an event that we want to look great for, or a friend joined, or there's this like moment. But yeah, most people stay and keep doing this stuff for preventative reasons.
Yes. I find pretty much the same thing as far as why people seek either a workshop or a private client session, and it is reactionary. I'd say about 98%. So
Yep.
they have hit, just like your folks, they have hit some kind of challenge, some kind of wall. Hopefully, they haven't waited so long that the point of no return is about to happen. But it would be great to get to a space where a higher percentage of people are doing this preventively instead of reactionary. But like you, aspirational, we will focus on that later. So let's talk about something that was in your intro, which is helping companies with employee burnout. The term burnout is just used ubiquitously, but is there an official definition of what burnout is?
Yeah. So the World Health Organization talks about burnout having kind of its three key components. So the first is this reduced sense of efficacy, or like feeling like you can't necessarily do your job well.
Mhm.
These are these feelings of like, I wish I was better. I wish, I could do this in a faster way. I wish I had more time.
Mhm.
The second is really about this like reduced sense of energy, like you're just tired all
Mhm.
the time.
Mhm.
And this is like, the second piece of burnout. The third is really about um, negative thinking. Like you tend to think negative thoughts. Now, I always like to say that negative thoughts don't have to be extreme. Like a lot of times
Mhm.
people think this is like, I hate my job, everything's terrible. Negative thoughts can be as simple as like, I wish we could, but we can't.
Mhm.
You become a blocker. Everything's
Mhm.
impossible. Everything's
Mhm.
hard. Everything's a problem. And when I think about burnout, first off, I always like to say, like, we're all bored of the term. Like, people use the term burnout, like, I'm in a stage of burnout, like, they're tired.
Mhm.
We like to use the term toasty at Mindy. You're feeling a little tired, a little exhausted, a little crispy. Because for some people, they've been under pressure for a long time. For other people, they're
Mhm.
tired. For other people, it's feeling overwhelmed. For other people,
Mhm.
it's feeling exhausted. And I really feel strongly that at the end of the day, mental fitness is a tool for you, like anything else, to
Mhm.
activate when you're not feeling your greatest. And the
Mhm.
only way to build that neural pathway in a way that sticks is to do it repetitively over time. And that means past the point of pain. And so I love that you're nodding your head like this. You know this, I know this. I know as a founder, I have to practice all of these things if I want to be as authentic as I need to be. That's accordance with my values of my company, the values of myself. And so I always like to say, a lot of people look at me like, oh, you've got your stuff figured out. I'm like, I have ADHD, I have time blindness, I've got a reading disability. I am a solo founder. I've got a lot going on in my life, and this is exactly when I'm supposed to practice this. I'm getting married in 2 weeks. I was just traveling abroad. I have family who just came in. And I think what's really special is I now have enough of these patterns to catch myself. And this is what it's all about. Is it's not about being perfect and getting to a place where you have a perfect schedule and you're always hitting your three priorities and every day you feel in flow, because it's just not human to feel that way
Right.
unless you lock yourself in a box in the mountains without any sort of human interaction, which causes its own issues. The idea though is to have these practices to lean on, to access when you need them, and most
Mhm.
of us need them every day.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. And yes, you see me nodding, and I should just be a bobblehead during this entire conversation because I'm like, preach, sister, preach. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. So I would like to step away from the individual level because the framework that you are describing, it sounds like, yes, a whole group could do it, but individually, this is what you can do with your stop, slow, and go. What about the leaders who are listening? And maybe they don't have these kinds of challenges, but they realize if I want to help my people, I need to do something. So, what are some signs that they should be looking for that their employees or even just a single team, they need this type of support?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I actually have never been asked that before, like on a podcast. But it's probably the most important thing for like a leader to be thinking about, which are like, what are these signals of toastiness or that your team really is not doing well? One is when you're finding that your team is not meeting your expectations on a regular basis, meaning they say they're going to do things and they're missing deadlines consistently. Two is when you're hearing a lot of feedback about people being overwhelmed. And this is very common. Like there is a real world where there is just too much to do and there's deadlines and people are very busy. But if people are consistently repeating that they're stressed and overwhelmed and struggling again to meet those deadlines, like that's a second clue. The third is that, again, they're just not having that can-do attitude. And this is where, like, we have, whether people state it or not within their values, this implicit agreement to be polite at work. And when people start breaking those rules, it tends to be because they can't help it. They are so tired, they're in survival mode. And so putting on airs, not saying hello in the morning, kind of skipping all of the niceties that create a really powerful and nice workplace, like a happy workplace, when that starts going away, that's when you know that it's a sign that people are starting to not be able to have the energy to get there. And you need to start working on some of these tools.
Let's say that somebody listening to this works for a supervisor or leader who does not have this kind of awareness. They do not realize that this is going on, but the team needs help. Do you have any tips for what somebody could say to their supervisor or leader as far as we need help?
Absolutely. I think what's really interesting, so the organizational fitness model we haven't talked a lot about, but I always like to say that great companies set expectations in terms of goals and values, meaning behaviors or how they show up, and then they hold people accountable. And most people think it's the leader's job to do that, but it's actually also the job of employees to do that as well. And when they're not feeling like they're able to operate at their best, going to your employer and saying, hey, classic framework, observation, impact, pause, recommendation. I'm observing that I'm very tired, as are my peers. The impact is that we're not hitting deadlines, and I feel really bad about that. You pause, you wait for your boss to respond and see if they say anything like, hey, I know it's a busy time, or I'd like to fix that for you. And then the recommendation is, hey, I think we need to take time as a team to figure out, is this a tools thing? Meaning, do people need to learn how to set boundaries or to, spend more time with themselves, de-stressing? Do we as a company need to spend more time on priorities and make sure that we're managing the workload? Or do we as a team just need a little time to have fun? And this is where the remote work environment has, as I would like to say, lost the plot. People talk about productivity and they talk about, do we have enough work days? And, employers are like, well, are people actually working? We have lost the water cooler moments. We've lost the joking in the hallway. We've lost the informal touch points with our teammates. And this has caused also people to feel more disconnected because there's less humanity at work. And so I always like to say that that third bucket might feel soft, but research shows that when people are having a good time, when teams function well, they just spend more time together and they spend more unstructured time together. And so that could also be a solution.
Do you think it's possible to give us in 2 minutes an overview of this organizational framework, organizational fitness?
Absolutely. So you ready for this? This is what I was born to do. I love quick stuff. So
okay.
I would say there's 4 elements to a company that's working on their organizational fitness. And the reason I use the term fitness is because you don't get to go to yoga once and stay fit. It's a practice. You go all the time. And sometimes you feel great and sometimes you don't, but there's general principles you're doing to strengthen certain parts of your body and your mind. And so when I think about organizational fitness, it's the same. It's not that a company's getting all of these right. Companies are complex adaptive systems. They change all the time. So there's 4 elements they should always be thinking about and working on. The first, as I mentioned, is expectations. This is expectations around goals, behaviors, and priority, which is 1. It's what's the single most important behavior and thing that every single person at the company needs to work on. The second thing is really around mechanisms for communication and accountability to those expectations. This is, I always joke, the invisible piece that a lot of people are like, well, what do you mean by this? This is, what are the structures and conversations you have in place that help make sure that people are actually following through on these things? Performance reviews are absolutely a mechanism for that, but performance reviews only happen once, twice a year. So how are we doing this on a regular basis? And more importantly, how do we make sure that people have these mechanisms for feedback loops when they feel as if they can't hit those expectations? So mechanisms for communication and accountability really matter. One-on-ones, meetings, suggestion boxes, all of this really counts. The third thing is foundations. Do people have the basic foundations they need to do their job well? Are they clear on what's expected of them? Do they have the ability to take breaks? Are they paid in line with market? Are they in a place where they actually are able to meet with somebody on a regular basis to check in on how they're doing? And are they recognized at a basic level for the work that they do? And last but not least is creating this environment for progress, which is really about creating an environment where people can grow from within. It's about creating learning opportunities, mentorship opportunities, points of connection with your peers. One of the single most important things you need to feel good at work, coming back to that fun and connection piece. And so we always like to say expectations, these mechanisms for communication and accountability, the foundations, and then these elements of progress and growth are the 4 buckets or categories that every leader needs to be thinking about. And the question I get asked a lot is like, where do most people fall down? Well, it's really around expectations. And this comes back to time management, because if we're not clear about what's important every day, every week, every month, from both the micro and the macro level, then it's impossible to manage your time, because the world's going to come at you with emails, with priorities, with things that they need. And if you're a hard worker, which I'm sure all of you are, you're going to meet their demands. Challenges, that's kind of like an athlete having 24 goals with an expanding number of goals. You could never win that game. You have to recenter on the place that you want to score. And that's where these expectations and accountability comes in, and really how that connects back to the topic that matters a whole lot to you and a whole lot to me every single day.
Gosh. So if everybody just focused on those expectations, all of the leaders out there focused on the expectations, then they'd be able to just build upon that and go through that framework. Well, I certainly hope that the entire world listens to you, because we would have world peace if everybody would listen to this. No, seriously, because we'd be so much calmer and not as stressed and not worried about burning out if they would just go through your framework. So, Lissy, I'm going to be telling the whole world about you, because they need to go to your website and figure things out. But before we talk about how to connect with you, I do like to end interviews with a personal question, because all of us, well, a lot of us are lifelong learners. So we like to continue learning. And we like to learn from others who have, quote unquote, made it. So, Lissy, you have shared with us that you've got the time blindness and ADHD and a reading disability, and yet you are successful. So do you have a time management practice, in addition to what you've shared with us, the mental fitness? Do you have a time management practice that you use on a daily basis to help you keep it together, even during this exciting, wonderful time of a wedding in 2 weeks?
Yeah. So every single day, actually, this is part of the MYNDY application that we have. I set my 3 priorities of the day. I set the number 1 most important thing that needs to get done, and then I block those on my calendar. And what's wild is the amount of days, you guys, that I don't have time on my calendar to block for the 3 things that I set. And that's where there's the ideal world, there's the where I want to be and where I actually am. And so that practice takes 5 minutes every morning. And that's crazy, because you'd be like, wow, don't you have the clearest thing? I've got a million things to do. And these 3 priorities, I should say that they are my personal and professional priorities. It's not that I don't get done other things outside of these 3, but these are my North Star. If I don't get these done, I can't feel like I won the day. And that's my goal, is every day to feel like I'm winning. So that's how I set my day up at the beginning. At the end of every day, I reshuffle what I'm doing and I move everything off of my list. And I usually pick one last thing to do to kind of like slam dunk the day. So what's like a small, tiny win? Maybe it's a little email, a little personal task that I can do that helps me feel really good. And by the time I close my computer, I have a general idea of my entire to-do list for the next day, which, by the way, is always too long, which is why I then come back the next morning to those, again, 3 priorities that I triage.
Nice. Excellent. I like that, ending with a ta-done. So you'll be super happy and on a positive note. Great. How can folks get in touch with you? Because everybody listening to this needs to get in touch with you.
Thank you. I mean, so first off, our website is www.myndy.co. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. I absolutely love talking about all of these topics. This is my life's work. And like I said, I'm a work in progress. So I'm constantly finding and trying new ways of operating. And yeah, if you ever want to chat, I am here for that. And yeah, I wish all of you the best of luck, but more than luck, the best of practice, I should say, with your time management techniques.
Lissy Alden, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.